Great. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We are really lucky to host Jay Austin tonight. Jay is the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Student Financial Services at UCI Law. So Dean Austin is going to tell us about UCI Law. Then I'm going to ask him a few questions about law school admissions in general. And then we're going to open it up to your questions. Just so you know, you can type questions into your question box, but I'm probably going to call on people who raise their hands so that we can get some other people's voices in. And we're not going to take any questions until the end of Jay's presentation and the end of my questions. So Jay L. Austin is the inaugural Assistant Dean of Admissions and Student Financial Services at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. Over the course of a 40-year career in higher education administration, he has also served as the Chief Admissions Officer of the University of Pennsylvania School of Law, the Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy, the Penn State University Dickinson School of Law, the University of California Hastings College of Law, and is an admissions officer at both Columbia University School of Business and Columbia Law School. Dean Austin also held several leadership positions on various campuses, including president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association at UC Irvine. He has served the Law School Admissions Council, LSAC, as a 3-time board member of the Board of Trustees, the chair of the Minority Affairs Committee, now known as the Diversity Affairs Committee, and as a member of the Finance and Legal Affairs Committee and the Investment Committee. Dean Austin studied biology and psychology at Columbia University and international management at the University of Liverpool. And now, Dean Austin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, David. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you personally, of course, and Sage.com for hosting this webinar, and to you participants here with you. What I'm calling everything you wanted to know about UCI School of Law, and of course answer your questions as we get to that. So let's begin. So UCI Law School actually is the newest of the major law schools in the country, in that we enrolled our first class in 2009. There had always been conversation about opening another public law school within. If you are familiar with California, then you know that there are no public law schools south of Los Angeles. UCLA was the last one, and in fact, UC Davis was the more recent law school within the UC system. So this notion of wanting to have a law school in Southern California was really the dreams of several key individuals. And we were delighted that our goal from day one was to become a nationally ranked law school as quickly as we could, and we think that we have done everything to achieve those goals, including our most recent ranking in the U.S. News as ranked number 21.
Hey, Jay, can I just cut in to ask you to move a little bit closer to the mic? You're cutting in and out, and it might help if you moved a little closer.
Got it. So, you know, we do publish a profile card, and it's available on our website. It's also a printed piece. And this just gives you an example of the class that just entered in 2017. Literally, today was the first day of orientation of our new class here. And though our profile has pretty much stayed consistent with this profile, we have some slight variations. The class is our largest class, this class that entered in 2018. Our LSAT and GPA profiles are pretty comparable to what they've been, as are some of the other demographics you see listed there. So this is where we're located in the state of California. And the state of California is enormously large. Within the system, there are 10 campuses in the UC system. 5 of the campuses have law schools. So up north, you have UC Davis in Davis, California, near Sacramento, and of course, Hastings in San Francisco, and then UC Berkeley across the bay there. In Southern California, you have UCLA, and then you have UC Irvine. So we are located in Orange County, which is approximately 45 miles south of Los Angeles and about 60 miles north of San Diego. Orange County is a beautiful location. We are literally 4 miles from the beach, and you can see the mountains off in the distance here. The local scene is quite attractive, and as a university, UCI is only 52 years old. And let's just play this short little video here for you.
Over 50 years ago, a group of pioneers had a vision. Amongst the rolling hills and orange groves on the Pacific coast, they would build one of the premier research universities in the country. At the time, there wasn't much here, but the city grew around the campus. And today, the University of California Irvine is part of a beautiful, vibrant community. A community with an entrepreneurial spirit. A community of culture and entertainment. A community of safety and security. And of course, a community with some of the best weather in the world. UC Irvine. More than meets the eye.
So this great location here offers an enormous amount of activities present. Disneyland is about 13 miles north of us, but an abundance of parks and other recreation activities, which many of our law schools actually participate in. And in fact, many of our law students actually live near the beach and then commute back to campus at short distance. So now let's talk about a little bit about curriculum in our actual program here. The goal was to create a law school that provided an enormous opportunity for practical training, that hands-on stuff. And most recently, the national jurors ranked us 4th in the nation for practical training, in part because we have outstanding clinical programs, opportunities for pro bono and externship placement, and the UCTC program, which is a program that invites University of California Law School students to live and work in DC over the course of one semester, typically during your second semester of your second year. Just some scenes here, students had representing clients. Here is an example of students participating in our moot court competitions. Again, some other happy faces and students participating in many of the activities here at the law school. One of the things that's hallmark to us, student body. And I say that because, I various law schools around the country, I think all of the student bodies tend to be more collaborative, but that support really is generated from the top down in terms of the mission of the law school, the leadership, really creating an atmosphere that students can both survive and thrive. And so here's just some examples of the very extensive activities that we both support and encourage students to engage in. And likewise, this is literally at the law school, but of course you have the campus, all the services that the campus offers as well. This is a picture of our courtyard. So the law school is really spread out into 3 distinct buildings with a center courtyard surrounding. One of the things that we are most proud of is what we call the community fellows. And these are selected upper-level students who really act as your mentor or guide for your first and second years while you're in the program. And it's an incredible group of students every year who volunteer to be campus fellows, or community fellows. Pet therapy, really important. Dogs come to law school both during, but particularly during exam time, as both stress relievers and just an opportunity to kick back and enjoy some wolf time with some eager pups. I think we are one of the few law schools that actually has a celebration called Halfway Done. And it is usually at the end of the fall semester, and particularly for first-year students and even for the upper class students. But it's a great way to recognize markers while you're in law school. And we continue to have this celebration every year. Again, a bunch of happy students just kind of hanging out. So faculty, outstanding faculty, and I say that because the hallmark of any good law school is the quality of its faculty, both the quality of the faculty in terms of their scholarly work, but also their accessibility and how they will manage you as a student and make sure they're available. So we are fortunate that our student faculty ratio, even with our student body, is on the low end of 1 to 10. And that's really crucial because everything that we know about education from K through 12, all the way through colleges, people learn best in small classes and in small student faculty ratios. And so that's increasingly important to us and will always remain a hallmark of this law school. The success of our alums and our graduates, and I say that because, we know California Bar, one of the toughest bars in the country. We are one of 5 law schools within the state of California that has above 80% pass rate. And the other 4 schools are Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, and USC. So as you're thinking about outcomes, and outcomes will be crucial to you, both as a law school student and ultimately as a practitioner, you want to consider what does it mean to be at a school that is going to provide you with strength in the curriculum, strength and opportunity, so that you are going to be successful in that as a first-time test taker. Now, most of our students who come to UCI are either current California residents or have been residents in the past, but 30% of our students have never set foot in the state. Nonetheless, many of them seek to stay in California for employment, but we've been very fortunate that our students continue to go throughout the country for employment following graduation. I know we'll talk about this later, but just a little brief things about how to apply. Again, most students, you use the e-apps and availability through LSAT, and we'll talk more about that. Financial aid and scholarships, abundant, both in terms of scholarship for entering students, but also we have a very extensive student financial services office that works specifically with students to talk about financing and the cost of the education. And then there's our general contact information. I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on is your opportunity to come visit us throughout the academic year. If you are admitted, we do host an annual Admitted Students Weekend in April, and we do provide some travel reimbursements, particularly for students who are coming from outside of California. So Dave, that's the end of my little PowerPoints here, so I'm happy to move on to the next phase.
Okay, great. So I'd love to ask you some questions.
Sure.
And you can, do you want to show your video now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Great.
All right, it's not opening.
1 sec, okay.
Maybe there you go. All right, here we go.
That work?
Here we go. Okay.
Great.
Participants there.
Okay, so nice to see you. So my first question is just, can you tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of your admissions process? So I think a lot of people are wondering what actually happens when you hit the submit button on LSAC. Where does it go? Does it go into the ether? Who reviews it? What's the timeline? How do you decide which applications you'll read first?
All good questions. Let me start with that. So as most of the ABA and LSAC member schools are participants with the e-app monitored and facilitated by LSAC, literally when you hit that send button, your application then falls into our office's database system. And you receive an automated reply saying, thank you, we received your initial application, and we will let you know when your CAS report arrives, right? And hopefully people know what the CAS is, which is something that you have to subscribe to for LSAC to have your transcripts and your letters of recommendation, as well as your LSAT score forwarded to us. That's the CAS report. As far as reviewing the application, it's rolling admissions for us in the sense that we review based on the date of completion. Our application will open on September 1st. I anticipate that shortly thereafter, we will begin to receive completed applications and start, the lights are on a timer in here, they've stepped off, I'm doing the rounds and they go back on. Sorry, folks. All right. And so we review on the basis of completion based on the time frame. So I usually say from 6 to 8 weeks is about how long people hear. With regard to how decisions made, every single file is read, and literally everything is read that is in that file. So that way we encourage you to be thorough and pretty deliberate in what you send to us, because the more information is better. And decisions go out over the course of from mid-December, literally all the way up through the spring and even through the summer if there's waitlist activity.
That's really helpful. So Jay, are you reading these applications yourself? Are you reading them by yourself? Are you sending them to a faculty committee?
A little bit of both. The initial screening does occur in the office. We do have a admissions committee, and the admissions committee both works with first the admissions committee, and at most law schools, you'll find members of the professional staff from the admissions office. You'll find faculty members. Typically, it's chaired by a faculty member. And then often they're current students, upper level students, primarily 3L students who are appointed to admissions committee either by the dean, the organization. And so really depending on the volume that particular school reads will determine how extensive and how many individuals actually read files. So over the course of the cycle, yes, our committee is actively engaged, making decisions, voting on really some of the tough candidates. I mean, because let's be honest, there's some files that are extraordinarily easy to read, both because of how strong they are, and then there's some files, unfortunately, that fit the other extreme, where maybe the applications are less strong or less competitive. So it's really the files that are in the middle that really require the most detailed and thorough read.
Got it. That's really helpful. Thank you. And in your experience, do students who apply early, right around September 1st, have an advantage?
Obviously, there's some advantage to applying early, because I think it does then alleviate some of the stress that you might feel about being a late applicant. I mean, it also says something about people having their act together and applying in a timely fashion, rather than be someone who's procrastinating about applying. But I think candidates need to apply when they're ready to apply. And if that means having worked on their personal statement, making sure they secure the right letters of recommendation, that may take time. I mean, lots of students, especially if they're in school, will use the time, say, beginning from the Thanksgiving holidays until mid-December to really work on their application. As far as a unique advantage, it's harder to say. I think that the more competitive you are, yes, absolutely, you might have an advantage applying early. If you are a less competitive applicant for a particular school, there might not be as much advantage to applying early, because schools tend to wait until there's a robust number of applications before we start reading files.
That's helpful. Thank you. And how do you feel about people who send an application and then contact you with requests about the application, like, oh, I've registered for another LSAT, please hold my application for that?
Well, let's take another situation that occurs more often. Let's say, for example, you submit your application and the resume that you submitted is fine, but suddenly you get a great new job, right? Mm-hmm. You want to update your resume with us. What you would need to do then is use our admissions at law email account and then upload that to us, because normally you're not going to be able to just make that kind of change on your CAS. So you need to contact us independently to let us know about that. Likewise, if you have a new letter of recommendation that you'd like to send, and if you have the option of either sending it to your LSAC report, which thus then becomes part of your CAS, and is then is distributed more broadly to all other schools, or if it's a recommendation that you have specific just for UCI, right? That was written just for your candidacy here, you may want to send that to us. So I would never say don't try to update your application. And then even more important is, let's say there's a change in your status. Unfortunately, if something happens and you need to notify the school because you've gotten a speeding ticket, right? And you want to be more transparent with that information than not. So of course, that would be something that we would need to be made aware of. As far as, let's say if you're going to take it, now that the LSAT is offered many more times a year, you may decide that you'd like to take a test again. And if that's the case, it's best to alert us that you're taking a score and you'd like us to hold your application, because otherwise we would consider your application complete with just one score. And so again, that would be the case where you could either call, or better, sending an email to us via our account to let us know that you're taking a new score. And you'd be submitting a new test.
What if, Jay, what if I'm applying to UCI Law and I work really hard on everything and I'm so proud of it, and I hit send, and the moment I hit send, I decide to just take another look at my personal statement just to kind of bask in it, and I see that there's a big fat typo in the third word. Do you think I should resend you the personal statement with a correction?
So what happens in that situation is you can send the correction, but we will not remove the original document.
Okay, good to know.
So, that's why I think about this whole process as your opportunity to become your own advocate. And being your own advocate means you're going to be as thorough as possible in double checking, triple checking, and having others check for you your personal statement, your resume, looking for typos, misspells, anything that might cause you some angst if you hit that send button too quickly.
And what if I get rejected, maybe because of that typo, maybe for something else, and then I want to reapply? Can I send the same essay? Let's say I get a better LSAT score, so my application is different. In that case, can I send the same essay, or do you think I should rewrite it?
Let me start with your first question first. Typos can be terrible, right? I don't know if they can be fatal, in that one typo may not derail your admissibility in that respect. Obviously, we want students to be thoughtful and careful and deliberate, but things do happen, and we understand that. Likewise, having a poor grade on your transcript won't necessarily derail your opportunity for admissions either. So, because I think that often people may decide not to apply to a school or even to UCI because they see some flaw in their character and it's only, say, a C- or 1D that they got freshman year, right? And so those don't necessarily preclude you from being admitted. I think if you have a new test score, and there is a test differential in terms of the scoring outcome, that might have some impact. People do have bad test days, right? And have better outcomes perhaps later. Maybe they've given more preparation to it, just a whole slew of things. So I wouldn't discount, what one different test score, whether it's an LSAT, whether it's a GRE, and we may talk about that in a second, but that whatever that standardized test score is, and if you've increased your performance, absolutely you should let the schools know. Or if there's other letters of recommendation, or if there's additional grades. We have students who apply and we have, say, their grade senior year, and they have an amazing fall semester of their senior year. You should make sure those grades land in our inbox. They are directed to us so that we see that information as well.
Okay, and speaking of possibly applying with a better LSAT score, in what circumstance do you want to see an addendum about an LSAT score, and what are you looking for in that addendum?
I would say if there's some disparity, and disparity often occurs, the difference between, say, an undergraduate GPA, regardless of how recent or how old it is, which is, kind of the equivalent of being in a marathon, right? It's an academic endeavor over time. And LSAT is a one-day wonder. And so for that individual who has demonstrated academic excellence over a sustained period of time, and their LSAT score, what do we call these? We call these splitters, right? That's a splitter. Someone who has one of the quantitative factors seems to be out of step with the other. And so that might be the case where you send more additional information about your testing history. You might see other standardized test scores if you have an ACT or an SAT or even a GRE. Likewise, if you have, your GPA for whatever reason is less, if you're less happy with it, and that often happens. Let's see, people start college, and sometimes it takes a minute to get traction. So it's not unusual, you change your major, maybe your freshman year, you take a couple of courses, you're just adjusting, transitioning to being on campus, and we know, 1D can be disastrous for a GPA, a cumulative GPA, because it's always hard to rebound from that. So there may be circumstances that are unique to you where you need to discuss either your LSAT score, standardized test score, and or your academic history.
Would you need to explain a jump in an LSAT score alone? For example, if your GRE is, relatively high, 3.85, whatever, but your first LSAT take was a 155 and then you got a 172. Would you want to see an addendum about that?
Absolutely, because even at that point, that may trigger that, anything more than one standard deviation, and that's typically about 3 points on this current test.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I would think that you may need to do some explaining, right? I mean, okay, so if you got a 150 and then you got a 175, that's going to trigger even the LSAT people to check your fingerprint, right? To make sure that it was you who took the test, right? Because that's such a strong score differential. And likewise, I mean, so now if you wrote and said, you know what, I had 104 fever, I should never have taken that first test. It may make perfect sense. On the other extreme, you don't see that kind of difference in a score band, 150 to maybe a 160 or something. But nonetheless, I think when you have a disparity between scores, it's best to offer some explanation, or we would reach out to you.
Okay.
You don't want schools to reach out to you for information that you should have provided to us.
Good to know. What if the explanation is just, I studied a lot better this time?
And that may be true, and then often you might want to say, well, because based on my practice exams, I was scoring about 170, but I absolutely froze. I mean, there's definitely, individuals who sit for the test, and, maybe that person who's sitting next to you or near you is tapping their feet, drumming a pencil, and it just is irritating, and it's just throwing your game off. So, I mean, things do happen that suggests that someone's test score is probably a truer score is what their second score may be.
Great. Okay, on the subject of how much stuff to send you guys, do you want students to send you the maximum number of recommendations?
We currently advise you and even here on our Do Not Apply, we accept up to 3. And I say, that because usually anything over, right, everyone's going to say wonderful things about you no matter what. So we're really looking for those quality letters. If you're still in school, you definitely should try to have 2. If you have one from an employer or somebody who did an internship, that may be the 3rd letter. Who says, I've known you all your life, you've taken care of my dog, and you're a great person. That's not really helpful. Now, if the judge that you've done some work with interning or have done some other experiential learning with, that might be fine. But yeah, 3 is about tops.
Great. Okay, last question. I hope it's not a doozy. What are your thoughts on the GRE?
Well, interesting. I think that my first thought is that usually people who do well in standardized tests do well on standardized tests, regardless of what that test is. And so I think what we'll find is just that, the way schools over the course of a range of various schools and a range of LSAT scores gain admissibility to a wide range of scores, I think you may see the same kind of range over GRE scores and the various schools are applying. For this year, and if you're familiar with what the ABA just recently decided this month, that a law school can only be in compliance with ABA standards and thus adhering to ABA accreditation requirements by being compliant, by requiring a standardized test that has been validated to their law school in particular. And so I think what you're some schools that have done that validity studies, that have a core group of GRE test takers that can equate a range of GRE scores to performance in law school. Here at UCI, we're only 10 years old. I don't have a pool of GRE test takers yet that we can do that kind of study that will provide us sufficient data. Do I think it'll happen in the future? Perhaps. So for this year, we are permitting students, if you have taken a GRE, to let us know what your score is, but we're assuming that the vast majority of our candidates will continue to take the LSAT.
Thanks so much, Jay. So if you don't mind, I'd love to let our participants ask you some questions. Okay, so if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'm going to allow you to talk, and then you can unmute yourself. Ask Jay a question. If we can't hear you, we'll unfortunately have to move on to somebody else. So, Donnie, I just allowed you to talk. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hey guys.
Hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I will be writing a GPA addendum. Basically, as it stands, I have a 3.52. However, I attended community college back in 2011, and I informally withdrawed and got 2 Fs. So those are kind of what's really dragging me down. Without those, I'd be sitting at around a 3.7. And the upper trend is pretty evident in my transcripts. So I kind of want to really bring that out in the addendum, because I don't think a 3.2 is a good representation of what I'm capable of. So my question is, should I include the metrics? Like, should I say, without the Fs, I'd be sitting at around a 3.7, or should I just not really say that and just point to, the fact that I've gotten mostly A's since community college, and when I transferred to the university, I got mostly A's? Or do you think it's a good idea to include the actual numbers?
Great question, Donnie. So 2 questions that I have. One, were any of the grades credits from the community college transferable and accepted towards your BA degree at the 4-year?
Yeah, unfortunately they were.
Okay, they obviously took some. Okay, so that's the first question. How much time between your attendance at the community college and your enrollment at the 4-year?
So I started the community college in 2015, and I started the 4-year in 2015, and I received the 2 Fs in 2011. So there's like a 4-year gap.
Got it. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Since the 4-year accepted some of the grades from your community college, that transcript you will be required to send to LSAC as part of your CAS report. Now, what LSAC does, and this is for anyone who attends a community college or any other schools, like if you went to multiple schools, LSAC calculates 2 GPAs, 2 distinct GPAs. One, the degree GPA, which is only the GPA from the bachelor granting program you attended. And then they calculate what they call the cumulative GPA, which is your GPA across all the academic programs you attended. Law schools are required by the ABA to report the cumulative GPA in our data. So you go to any law school's website, you go to their 509 reports, wherever you see, you look at their profile cards, their view book, that GPA that you see is the cumulative GPA that the incoming students have had. But what that means is we see these 2 separate GPAs. And so for you, we will see the cumulative GPA that incorporates those 4 grades from your community college. And that most likely will mean that the cumulative GPA will be lower than your degree GPA. Nonetheless, there's some time, it sounds like 4 years. There's also, we will see the trajectory of your performance once you arrived at the bachelor's program. So I can't say exactly that all schools will be encouraging, but for the most part, you've done what you can to kind of distance yourself from those poor grades in community college. By adding, probably no more than a couple of paragraphs in your addendum. I mean, don't go off on 2 pages, because what we want to know is where you are today in your academic performance. And the best way to demonstrate that is to, if you've already finished your bachelor's degree, focus on how well your performance has been there. You said it's been like a 7, that's like dean's recognition, I mean, all those things, honors, honor society or stuff. So focus on that. You could say something very both benign and brief about the community college core grades.
Okay. So I did graduate magna cum laude, so I would include that, but I guess, do I include the numbers? I mean, or is that really just kind of irrelevant? Like,
we'll see the numbers. There's nothing
okay.
to include. I mean, we will see the transcripts,
Right.
see the GPAs, your semesters. I mean, actually, and you can go and look at what you need to look at what the CAS report includes, because your entire academic career, community college, 4 years, will be broken out by semesters and by years for us. And so we can see what trajectories up, down, sideways, flat, whatever, and really get a sense. So you don't have to provide us with numbers at all. You just need to put some meat on the bones and offer a little.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Donnie.
Thank you.
Let's go to Kate Willis. Oh, I can't allow Kate to talk because you have an older version of Zoom. Sorry, Kate. How about Suzanne Thompson?
Hi, David.
Hi there.
Hi, Jay. Oh, good. I'm so glad you can hear me. My question is pretty specific. I'm currently a speech-language pathologist, and I have decided to go to law school because I want to pursue education law and special education law. I mean, I'm open to other things, but that is my area of interest and why I'm doing this career change. I'm wondering, knowing that, if you have any advice for me just seeking out schools, knowing that I have that specific interest. In question 2, I kind of Googled UCI as you were talking, and I didn't see anything specific to education law, but is there something that I missed?
Sure, great question, Suzanne. And it's something we actually have one of my 1L students who just started today, majored in speech pathology as an undergrad. And
oh, amazing.
I mean, and I don't think that it was necessarily the courses that that students that she was necessarily attracted to. So here's my first thing. I mean, I think, going to the best law school that you get into is probably something that you'll hear over and over and over the course of applying. And there's some truth to that matter, because it will allow you to have some currency in your degree and opportunities thereafter. So I can't say that only picking a school that seems to have an abundance of educational type courses as an option. I will tell you that you may find more opportunity at law schools that already have a school of education, say a graduate school of education on their campus. Because in that way, more than likely, you could cross-register and take some courses that might be in a master's program in education without completing a master's in education or higher education or educational policy or social, anything like that. So that, even dual degrees, a JD and say a master's in education. But education not in terms of the teaching track, right? Because lots of campuses offer a master's program for people who are teaching and thinking about maybe being a principal. You're really looking at educational policy. So yes. That's one. So look at law schools, and there are a number of law schools. University of Pennsylvania, where I've spent years at, they have a great school of ed. We have one here at UCI. USC has a great school of education. I think Berkeley does. I mean, Harvard has a great school of education. There's an abundance of schools like that around the country, and some of the other factors that may be attractive to you you're going to have to tease out.
Perfect.
And then second, I'd say then you begin to look at the curriculum at the law schools. But the truth is, no matter where you go to law school, you're not going to delve into the things that you really want to be involved in, your electives, into your second and third year. So, some of those initial courses that you take, constitutional law will be important to you. Torts will be important to you. So, there'll be torts in your courses in your first year, and even in that first semester, that will help provide some insight. And then finally, I think, with externships and even employment opportunities, schools that have strong placement in the public sector, the government sector, because that's where you may spend a lot of your time working. And so, just look at a wide range of schools.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm going to take Kate's question. She asked in the question box because her microphone didn't work. She said, "Hi, my question was about scholarships. I was wondering if Jay could talk more about the scholarships that UCI offers and if they require separate applications and the different factors that you consider when you offer them. Thanks."
Sure, great question, because everyone, financing a legal education is quite a challenge these days, and even whether it's at a public or private school, a city law school, or a school that's in a rural part of the state, you're going to be paying a significant sum to go to law school. So we offer both merit-based scholarships and some need-based scholarships, and the distinction is crucial. And you'll find some schools maybe only offer all merit or all need. Merit-based scholarships you don't apply for. We consider all students who are admitted as candidates for merit-based information. A good place to look about scholarship information is on the ABA 509 disclosure that every law school has to have published on their website, because on that information shows you the quartile, like the 75%, 50%, and the 25% of percentile of what scholarship ranges are. So you can see what the average awards are and whether or not students actually are able to keep their awards. Because that's also important. Being able to renew your award for your second and third year is important for us. You see there the renewability is a 2.5, right? So in terms of the law school GPA to keep your scholarship. Need-based awards, we do require you to complete FAFSA. We want parental information if it's available, even though you may be considered for federal loans as a graduate student. We don't need parental information, but at least for our need-based grants, we do. Our need-based grants tend to be small, and they are usually not renewable. So just to give you a sense of the range, so I have students here who have merit-based scholarships, that's our UCI Law scholarships, anywhere from $10,000 up to $45,000 per year. So it really depends on the strength of your application. It's not about financial need for those scholarships. Then we do have a series of what we call fellowships, and there's a little bit of information on the website. It's not here on my slide, but for students who are interested and have demonstrated experiences, maybe thinking about pursuing international law, intellectual property, environmental law, we have specific fellowships for those students as well. And that's a more in-depth application process, and at least I should say application, a review process that happens there.
Thanks so much, Jay. And thanks for the question, Kate. Let's go to Jordan Katz. I just called on you. Are you there? Looks like that might not be working. Oh. Hey, Jordan, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. That was my fault.
Okay, great. Jay, thanks so much for joining tonight. I have two questions. The first one was touched on briefly by David. I have a 159 LSAT score in 2016, and in this year I scored a 164 in June and a 174 in July. The 159 to 174 is the result of better studying. but the 164 to 174, you know, unfortunately I had some personal matters that affected that June test date. How specific should I be in describing that event to put folks like yourself at ease and show that 174 is, you know, because the 174 is where my PTs were. They were in the 170s. And so I just want to make sure that I do everything I can to make it clear that 174 is most representative. And then my second question is that in both of my recommenders have asked me to complete the first draft of their letters, and they would like to review them and edit them. I've seen, and I would like your opinion on that practice, what you folks think of that.
Okay, great questions, Jordan, and congratulations on improving that LSAT score, even with those, you know, the challenges of those two initial administrations for yourself. So let me go back again, because I talked a little bit about how the data that law schools reports really reflect two key things. One, remember the cumulative GPA, and the LSAT. So schools report on our data, we're permitted to do this by the ABA, to report the higher of all the scores, right? And people used to think it used to be the average years ago, but now we're able to report the higher, which is a good thing for you all as applicants. So that 174 is pretty darn special and will matter a great deal in the review process wherever you're applying. I think your instincts are correct, Jordan. Use a very brief, and brief could be no more than 3 sentences that outlines both that initial test and then what your second score is, and even highlighting what you've been doing on your PTs. I mean, I'd like to hope and think that maybe your academic record is also quite substantial and outstanding. So that would actually align better with what your ladder score would be on your LSAT, right? So that's helpful too. So if you feel compelled to put some information down, because we will see all 3 scores, we'll see when you took the test as well, because the dates associated with each test that we received. So, you know, no more than 3 sentences, right? Keep it brief. Focus on that, where you are now. With regard to the letters, if those are academic instructors, you know, for most part, lots of academic instructors already have a standard template that they start using before they fill out a letter of recommendation. I mean, I guess there's 2 things. One, if you're just kind of boxed in because this is what they expect you to do, otherwise they're not going to give you letters of recommendation generally, that's a tough position to be in. You know, we like to believe that the letters have come from the letter writers, the authors, and that they have not engaged an applicant to help draft the letters or be creative with the letters. But there's not a lot that we can do. And there's not a lot that we can do because, you know, you don't want to, if these are people that are important to you and you think are going to be important as those who can address your abilities, then you're going to probably need to do what they suggest. However, I hope that, you know, whatever their initial paragraphs are, nothing more than, you know, you're in this class, this is the class that you're taking, which is really kind of public information anyway. They've known you for X number of years, which again is kind of public information. And that's the beginning of the statement. And they will fill in the more meaty stuff, talking about your skills and abilities, fitness for legal education.
Yeah, thank you. I will definitely coax them in that direction because it's
tell them that you kind of talked to several deans of admissions at law school. And we understand faculty members want to be efficient, but however, that's probably not a cool thing to do. At least you're doing it.
Yeah, I had a strange, I wasn't quite sure how to respond to it, especially when they both responded in that way. In regards to the numbers, you know, unfortunately, I'm not graduating with I'm not applying with the most stellar GPA. It's a 3.5, although, you know, I took longer to adjust to undergrad than I wish I had. It does have an upward trend in the upperclassmen years, and I speak about that in a brief addendum as well.
And I think that's about the best you can do.
Yeah.
And it's, and even depending on what your major is, where you went to school, what you were doing, other than being in academics in the classroom, a 3.5 is a really solid GPA, right? I mean, so there's other, that's why there's so much more noise in a GPA than just being told what the GPA is. And the noise being the major, the school, the sequencing, how you took your courses, what you were doing, were you working, were you involved, were you doing athletics, were you, outside organizations. So that's why it's important to fill in the information. Let me just go back to the letter writers for 1 second. I get it. I mean, if these are individuals who are at a large university and they're writing lots of letters, yeah, I mean, lots of people write lots of letters and they get exhausted. So maybe you could say something like, well, how about if I give you just some snippets from my personal statement so you may know a little bit more about me, that would make me feel more comfortable. Here's my resume. So you might be able to, coax them by using different type of carrots.
Yeah, absolutely. Give them a skeleton of facts and then some snippets of superlatives, or remind, because I'm a non-traditional applicant. I graduated 6 years ago, so they'll need some refreshing anyway.
Sure.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
Jay, I'm going to go on to a question that an international student asks. She says, "Happy 10th anniversary at UCI, and thank you for your time. My name is Jenny, and I'm an international applicant from Canada. And I would like to ask, one, if international students are also eligible for scholarships at UCI, and if so, do we automatically have a lower chance of receiving scholarships compared to domestic students? And two, what are some options international students have with student loans?"
Great question, Jenny. And we actually have a couple Canadians. We always have some Canadians here at UCI. Our ability to consider and award you for scholarships is not tied to whether or not you are a U.S. citizen or not. That is our institutional aid that we make available for any student who's been admitted. And often for our international students, that is the one of the more crucial pieces of the financial, their financial capital to help them with law school, because U.S. citizens, non-U.S. citizens aren't eligible for any of the federal loan programs that the U.S. government provides graduate students. So that makes it a little difficult. So yes, all students are admitted, whether national or not, are considered for scholarship money. And like I said, our awards go from about $10,000 to $45,000, and they're renewable for your second and third year. At least for non-U.S. citizens, it may be possible to secure private loans, private educational loans, with co-signers, with a U.S. citizen as a co-signer, to support your educational expenses. It is obviously far more trickier for some of the Canadians. The exchange rate is not always favorable to the U.S. dollar, so that also might inflate the cost of education. I think you have to be creative with your own resources, maybe some outside scholarships that, if you go to our website and go under scholarships, you'll see there's a lot of outside scholarships that we make available for students. Those aren't necessarily tied to U.S. citizenship status. So that's maybe important and something to think about as well.
Okay, thanks, Jay. That's helpful. This is well, I'll let you make what you will of this question. Jay, what should be mentioned in UCI Law statement? What's the right answer?
All right, we have, and thank you, David, for asking. So in our application, we have what we call 2 prompts for examples of written expression. The first prompt is your general personal statement that I think most students applying to law school are familiar with. And we offer some guidance, but it's really your discretion to whatever you're going to talk about. The second example of written expression that we require, it's very simple. It's called why UCI. And really for that, we want to know what is it that excites you about our particular law school? I mean, we're very thankful that our acceptance rate is about 1 in 4. So we can be fairly selective in terms of the number of students that we admit and based on the student body that we want. So we really do use that second essay, the YUCI, as a way to help gauge, are you someone who would be a good fit for our community? Either based on the programmatic opportunities that we make available, based on your desire to align yourself with our mission and the type of students that we have here. What we hope you don't do is just try to spoon feed our tidbits from our website back to us or from our view book. And we're pretty astute at making that judgment when people are just kind of spoon feeding us our own information back. So you should really work to be thoughtful and insightful about why the school is a good fit for you and use that essay accordingly.
Yes, don't make Jay eat his own words.
That's right.
I like this question too. Jay, my question is about the personal statement. In your mind, what separates a good personal statement from a great one?
That's another excellent question. I was just telling someone today about having, after having read thousands and thousands and thousands of personal statements over the length of my career, there are a couple that really stick in my brain still at this point. I think it comes down to really using your authentic voice, right? And writing something that speaks to your passion, to your aspirations. You think of it as, I'm going to read your short story today. Actually, your short story in about 15 minutes, because you're not going to spend too much time on individual applications. That's just by the nature of the practice. But, for the time that I'm devoted and my committee is devoted, we are singularly focused on reading your personal statement. So like any good short story, you want to draw the reader in. You want to really be able to speak quite quickly to why we should keep reading your personal statement or your short story. We all have had the experience of picking up something to read, reading the first paragraph, and just saying, that just didn't really work. I don't know about that, right? You come back to it, but so drawing the reader in, and it's hard, I get it, it's a challenge, but that's what you would do as a practitioner, right? Your writing as an attorney is going to be your biggest tool in your arsenal to support your clients, whether they are someone that you're working with in a homeless shelter or whether you're working on a mega deal for some large corporate law practice. So, being like that, early on, I said, this is a chance for you to be an advocate for yourself. And that's learning that skill that is going to make your ability to write a persuasive statement really useful for you. So it may mean many drafts. It may mean having people who don't know anything about you read your personal statement to give you some feedback. It may but it really is pretty crucial how you are able to work to that. And I know lots of students struggle with the personal statement. Here's something I've always suggested. If you turn on your audio recorder on your phone, stand in your bathroom, look in your mirror, and talk about who you are for just a few minutes and listen to it, record it. And just hear what is a way to help with your drafting of the letter.
That's a great idea. Jay, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we do, sure.
Okay, great. I'm going to take one from somebody who seems to be in the know. Hey, how prevalent is yield protection in law school admissions generally and at UCI in particular? Should students with a 4th quartile GPA/LSAT do something to let you know that we're serious?
Often by applying, right? I mean, because that's the beauty of the quartiles. Schools admit over a range. And so not everyone who applies to law school has a 170 and a 4.0, and not everyone who is admitted has that same kind of profile. So, use every tool in the arsenal of your application to help us know as much about you as possible. And there's sometimes we actually reach out to candidates and say, you know what, I need you to talk more about why you got this D, or why was this semester so lousy, because it looks like all your other semesters were great. Or tell me more about this job that you did or this travel experience. So the best thing I can say is, it's like that old Seinfeld episode. You don't want people to assume, because when we assume, we're not going to assume correctly. It's really, you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So tell us everything about yourself to help us make the best informed decision, so we can be proactive about your candidacy and hopefully determine that you are a great fit and ultimately a wonderful student for UCI.
Great. Okay, Jay, Dean Austin, I want to thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I'm sure that everybody who attended learned a lot. And it was great. Should students look at your website if they want to find more information?
Yes, absolutely. And here's our contact information. You can also find me on the web if you'd like to email me personally and remind me that we met in this chat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm really open for all that, so please do. Thank you, David, for organizing this. I think it's been wonderful, and I hope I've been helpful and informative to all of you who happen to tune in tonight.
You've been great. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.